It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast for 2023, available every morning on iHeartRadio, Spotify and Apple, and of course, wherever you get your podcast from. Well, it's a Sunday. It is the 12th day of February for 2023. I hope you're enjoying your weekend, whatever you're up to property-wise. As our weekend continues, I tell you what, it's going to be extremely hot in Brisbane and Perth. I'll let you know about that weather forecast coming up in just a moment. And also on the way, we've got the 7 days of real estate as we look back over some of the podcast highlights. We talked to Christian and Byron Bay about the last 2 years of Sydneysiders and Melburnians descending into Byron Bay and buying properties. And we also talk with Alex about Paddington and New Farms. These are big suburbs in Brisbane. Marc Cox is in from Bendigo talking about the property market there, the attraction and the growth, and also the art and culture of Bendigo. Kyle is in from Albany, a coastal regional area that is becoming extremely popular with investors and also first home buyers with a very attractive median house price. And we round it off with Arjun talking about creating your own prolific property portfolio.
It's your weekend real estate podcast.
And is 2023 the year that you actually get your hands dirty with doing some of the building yourself with any renovation or building project? And on that note, I see that Nicolas Cage, he's quite handy with his hands. He built a tree house in his backyard in Bath in England as a way to escape from the stresses of Hollywood and spend time with his son. I didn't realise that he is known for his hands-on approach to projects and also his love of architecture and design. Wow, I've got a whole new appreciation for Nicolas Cage. If you're celebrating your birthday for today, for the 12th of February, happy birthday to you. You are celebrating, who are the celebrities? Claire Danes, the American actor, she's turning 43. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, he is turning the big 50. Josh Stone, the British singer-songwriter, she's turning 35, and Jeremy Irons, the English actor, he is turning 74 today.
We are just as addicted to property as you are. The Real Estate Podcast. It's the main centre forecast.
All right, let's have a look at your weather on this Sunday morning. As mentioned, it's going to be fairly dry around the country. Sydney expecting fine and sunny conditions with 29 degrees. Melbourne cloudy but dry, keeping the temperature down to 20. Brisbane expecting a very hot day. Sunshine with 37 degrees. Keep the fluids going. And in Perth today, also sunny with 33 degrees.
Enjoy your morning coffee. It's your real estate weekend podcast in review.
Generally, February, everyone returns to the city if they've been on holiday here, and if they've had a good time, they start hitting computers and hitting inquiries from February. Generally, we have a low supply, so, with people sitting on hands, it can take one or two transactions or solds to get the ball rolling, because there might be one particular street or two streets, and if one property sells, all of a sudden buyers are like, oh, I don't want to miss the next one if it comes up.
And Christian, are you a local or are you an import like so many people?
There's not many locals left, but I've been here 12 years living permanently. So I've seen all the changes in my time, and I hear and respect all the changes from the past. 2016, 2017, we were the highest growth in the country, and families started moving here then, well before COVID. That was our market, families moving and making that change for lifestyle. It's interesting seeing people, the different trends, and obviously en masse, seeing Sydney and Melbourne people move here in the 2-year period of pandemic. So I'm just seeing how they integrate.
Yeah, because there is this term, of course, regional remorse, where people moved out of a city like a Melbourne into regional areas, and then suddenly they just craved for the bigger city. Are you finding that's not really the case in Byron Bay? There must be surely a few people that have decided to move back.
Look, no doubt there'd be a handful. Personally, I haven't come across too many. I think with all of this influx also brings amazing new restaurants, amazing new opportunities in business, and a lot of them actually thrive on meeting up. I go to school drop-off, and these other parents are all, you could tap into someone from any field you wish, and then off you go and have a coffee with them, and then all of a sudden a new idea comes up. So it is a city in that sense. It's just done in a very casual way. It's barefoot or board short boardroom meeting, but everyone has it going on, so to speak. So there is an absolute city flavour here. We are very close to the Gold Coast with Pacific Fair and Robina and sense of theatre and culture there. But most people will jump on a plane and go to a concert if they want to have that kick, or go and see family for the weekend in Melbourne and be back. Commuting is just so simple. With Byron Bay Airport is full of flights, and so is the Gold Coast. So it is a small city in that sense of enough connection.
It's your real estate weekend podcast in review.
So if you look at repayments, it actually makes it easier to keep those properties. So we actually have, surprisingly, very little property coming to market, and a lot of those investors, they're earning too much money out of the rental market to really put the properties on the sale market.
What about at the other end of that? So if somebody's making a lot of money with the rentals, they can then leverage themselves up to buy another property, but they find it at the other end that there is not the properties there for them to buy. Is that been a bit of a factor?
It is. So they're then having to go further out or look at completely different markets. So yes, it is a factor, and we are finding that there's buyers looking up to 6 to 12 months to find the next property that suits either their portfolio or lifestyle. So it's quite a hard market to buy into.
Yeah, and I can hear people sort of listening right now thinking, gee, what's the sort of medium prices for Paddington and New Farm? So let's just break that down, because I think there's a little bit of a saving between the two if somebody was maybe limited with their spending power. So can you tell us what that median price for Paddington and New Farm is, and what sort of savings somebody could make between the two?
Yeah, so please don't quote me on this, but as far as I understand, the median price in New Farm now is about 2.25 compared to Paddington, which I believe sits at about 1.7 or thereabout. So what we are finding, that's quite different. And so you can start to see you're going to get a lot more value for Paddington than you are for New Farm. But again, it just depends on the lifestyle, livability, renovation. There's a lot more apartments in New Farm than there is Paddington. And that leads into two other areas, which is Tenerife, and also you're going over to Newstead, which has been quite heavily been redeveloped in the last, I'd say, 7 to 10 years. But Paddington appears to have more houses. If you're looking for apartments, they're more the 6-pack, 8-pack conventional units, or there's been development occur behind a Queenslander. So then you've got apartment blocks sitting behind, but they're smaller boutique.
It's your real estate weekend podcast in review.
Well, it's like all markets at the moment, Craig. There's a little bit of uncertainty about. One thing that Bendigo does offer is we're a very resilient market. We might not have the huge highs that you see in capital cities, but as a regional city, our market ticks along very well. Things quietened down over the Christmas break, but we've sold 6 properties in the last 6 days, Craig, and looking to kick off 2023 to a great start.
Well, what do you mean? That is a great start. Yes, you've done it. You want to start the way you want to continue, as I always say. And let's just have a look at some of the prices. Like last year in Q2, the second quarter of last year, Bendigo recorded a median house price of $606,000 and for a median price for a unit of $433,000. Is that still holding up at the moment?
I think the market's come back a little bit, Craig, and that's pretty consistent across all markets. On the ground here, I would say houses are back in the order of 5% from our peak, probably 5 to 10%, and the peak was back at the end of 2021, early 2022. However, if we look across the board and we compare to pre-COVID prices, we're still up significantly and probably somewhere in the order of 30 to 35% up on those prices from early 2020.
Okay, and I mentioned about the arts side of Bendigo because it's a real changing culture. It's got this art flavour, and I think it's fair to say that is that bringing in a lot of people from the metro because of just that changing culture side of Bendigo?
Absolutely, Craig. It's one of our big selling features of the town of Bendigo. If you look at recent times, the Bendigo Art Gallery's had some magnificent world-class exhibitions ranging from the recent Elvis exhibition right through to Marilyn Monroe, which is going back a few years now. And that's brought huge numbers of out-of-town visitors to our regional city, and they've enjoyed the lifestyle while they've been here over that 2-3 day period. They've attended our wonderful restaurants, cafes, and they've got a feel for the culture that exists here. And I think that's part of what has driven up prices and people wanting to come to Bendigo as a place to live.
Enjoy your morning coffee. It's your real estate weekend podcast in review.
First home buyers would make up quite a large market, would it, in Albany?
Certainly, first home buyers are a part of our market all the time. You know, you've always got people wanting to get into their first home, moving out of home. Quite often when people leave Albany, they go to university or whatever, they fall in love and then they decide they want to start a family so that they'll move back to Albany and buy that home for the family that they've got or they're going to have. And it's also super affordable in Albany, you know, with the medium house price being around $450 at the moment.
Now, you've just got the ears that are pricking up from people interstate. 450,000.
Yeah, so the medium house price is $450,000, which is up from $375 back in 2019. So they're the latest reword data figures, with land jumping massively from $155 in 2019 up to a medium of $200 in 2022. So yeah, very, very affordable. And of course, you've got everything that you would want if you're raising children or downsizing, or you love the ocean or fishing or surfing or hiking or whatever. It's such a beautiful place, and I think the secret is sort of getting out.
Now, I just want you to paint the picture because people will want me to ask this question. $450,000, that gets you a house. How much land does that come with? Can you just break that down for us?
Yeah, sure. So probably 450 will buy you a very smart sort of 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. It may have other things. There might be a shed involved. There might be side access. The land size could be anywhere from 500 to 1,500 square metres. It could be fibro on stumps, you know, or it could be a brick veneer home. It could be double brick. There's just a very wide variety of home in Albany or the region. Yeah, 450,000 probably won't buy you a beautiful 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home on 700 square metres in suburbia, but it will buy you something relatively close to that.
It's your real estate weekend podcast in review.
First off, I thought talking about the very question of building a prolific property portfolio, you have been actively doing this. So perhaps for the listener, let's break down how many properties that you have in your own portfolio.
Yeah, so to break that down, my wife and I have 17 properties in our portfolio, and that's across residential, commercial, and spread across 5 states in Australia. And we've been building on that since 2015, so coming towards 8 years now.
Okay, so 17 is going to keep anybody reasonably busy. So Arjun, people know what a property portfolio is, but let's break down what a prolific portfolio actually is.
Yeah, so why I think of a prolific property portfolio is that, you know, we all want a portfolio that stops relying on us and eventually gives back to us. And when you think of prolific, you know, plentiful, reproduce, abundance, these are the sort of things that come up. And so when I think of what it means, I always look at, okay, well, how can we get a portfolio to a stage where it's not so much about just what you earn or what you save or put aside, but the portfolio itself fast tracks you. And I find that typically occurs when you cross 3+ properties, because the equity growth, even on average compounding rates of 5%, gets to a state where you can start to build and scale a portfolio.
Okay, and for Sydney-based investors starting to build their prolific property portfolio, there are traps. So how do they get it underway and do it the right way in order to build one?
Yeah, the right way in order to build one starts with the game of finance. As they say in property investing, it's a game of finance with houses thrown around. So the key here is that when typical Sydney investors think of their borrowing capacity, the most common thing we hear is they go into their local bank, they hear about what the borrowing capacity is, and they either maximize it or think that's it when it's finished. And what they don't realize is that each time you look at different banks and different tiers of banks, you get different results. And then moving even deeper, when you look at rental yields, affordable properties, it starts to change in terms of what you can borrow. For us to get to that prolific stage where we can cross the 3+ properties, we need to really engage a broker that's going to be able to look at different rental yields and also consider different types of banks to get you there. And this is one of the first mistakes of a property portfolio that I see Sydney investors make. When it comes to the final piece to get right, it's actually also market timing. It's funny how we all look at the long term only of investing, but 90% of local government areas have actually achieved 5% or more compound growth. So that to me tells me, Sydney investors, you're going to be okay long term. It's now to make the best short-term decision to scale a portfolio well, because 90% plus of these areas have done well. And so I think from that perspective, it takes the weight off your shoulders and you start looking at making sure the finance is well played. And secondly, you make short-term driven decisions because the long-term of property in Australia is well placed.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.